Good Sunday morning to you, and welcome to There is a Method to the Madness. My name is Rob Maxwell. I'm an exercise physiologist and personal trainer. I'm the owner of Maxwell's Fitness Programs, and I've been in business for the past 25 years. Okay, so hold on to your seats, folks. I'm going to go on a little rant today. Educational rant, hopefully. Did my homework, got my notes. I'm ready to go. Today we're going to talk about gadgets. Gadgets, and more gadgets. I'm literally reading from a magazine article that I wrote in 2013, so roughly 9 years ago. And I wrote it for Florida Running and Triathlon. And I'll just read the brief little segment they pulled out and highlighted, then I'll get into today's material. I said, there's an app for this and an app for that. We are getting more and more technologically advanced. That's good for some folks, especially those who make and market these products. But is it really helping people get more fit? That is very debatable. 9 years later, I'm still talking about this. So yesterday I'm out on my long run. I'm training for, I'm training for life. That's the most important thing, right? But I like to have many goals along the way. So we're doing this relay again up in Minnewaska, this part of New York that I'm from, with beautiful mountains. And they always do, every year they do a Rock the Ridge event, and it's to raise money to protect the environment up there, which they already do a phenomenal job up there. There's very little worry about that. They've got very tight zoning. So anyway, it's a 50-mile race. We're dividing it up, so I got to put in my time. And I'm out on the trail down in NSB Edgewater, because I like to run down there, bike down there. And I've got my Garmin GPS on, and I'm not huge on gadgets to begin with, and I was really just using it for a sense of distance and time. But, this thing is like doing what they do, if you use them for running, sometimes cycling. It's all over the place. I mean, it's like, it's just crazy. Like, it was telling me the speeds I was going, slow, fast. I mean, none of it was accurate. So about midway through, I'm like, just running for time, because really it all comes down to time anyway. There's always the debate between duration and distance, and the reality is all the studies say that time is actually more objective versus distance. Excuse me. All right. So, and it just got my mind thinking. It's like, why do we use these stupid things anyway? I mean, really, we're supposed to use tools to make us better, right? And I was on a pretty long run yesterday, an hour and 45 minutes, so I had a lot of time to think. And, I think it's good that my mind went off on that direction a little bit, because I came up with some good material that I later researched to get the numbers to talk about. And the reality is, I just don't think they're helping us actually one bit. So let me give some statistics, and then I'll go into that a little bit more. But let me nail you some statistics. These are fascinating. All right. So since 1975, this is worldwide. Went from the World Health Organization to poll these statistics. Obesity has tripled since 1975. That's 300% if you're keeping score at home. All right. In 1975, the obesity rate in this country was only 10%. It is now 40%. That's obesity. Obesity and overweight coupled together is 70%. 30% not. That's disgusting. Anyway, 10% in 1975. And that was the minority, right? 90-10, that's the minority. Tripled since. In 2016, 1.9 billion people are overweight. 650 million are obese. 1.9 billion. This is worldwide. All right. 39 million under the age of 5 are overweight and obese. The World Health Organization, at this part of the statistics, and I got more people, I've got more, went on to say that obesity is preventable and one of the most, if not the most preventable diseases our world is dealing with. Remember that. Preventable. Okay? So, 340 million people between the ages of 5 and 19 are obese. 340 million people, 5 and 19. So basically kids. World Health Organization went on to state, at this point I got more statistics, but I just thought it was interesting how, we hear a lot about the World Health Organization with COVID. Everybody's quoting the statistics and stuff, and to give them credit, the media is, they're not talking about it, but the World Health Organization has really taken some strong stands on obesity and being overweight. So I was really impressed with this section of it. It's just, again, it's not being talked about. So anyway, it went on to say, and due to this, the consequences of this obesity is cardiac disease, which includes heart attack, myocardial infarctions, and stroke, diabetes, musculoskeletal issues, which I've been saying forever, especially arthritis. So people are like, oh, I don't want to run, I'm going to get arthritic knees. Nope, that's not what the studies bear out. It's actually being overweight and carrying a load on your joints. Some cancers, not especially, it said some cancers, including endometrial, breast, ovarian, prostate, liver cancer, gallbladder, kidney, and what is this last one here? Colon. Which colon and breast cancer are the two that get talked about a lot, and I believe prostate with obesity. And there's all these other reasons. Of course, I know that, but I'm just giving the the statistics on this. Okay, so then you think, well, let's see here. What about some other things here? Here's some other little facts if we want to walk away from obesity a little bit, which is good because, I started this whole thing talking about performance and these gadgets that we wear. And you're like, well, what's the point with gadgets? Well, and again, I'm going to get more into that, but, notice the difference. 1975, I literally looked it up. There was really only I was surprised to find out that there was some wearable fitness gadgets back then, but these things must have looked like IBM, 6-foot computers on these people's arms, because I remember the first GPS I got like 15 years ago, and it looked like I was wearing a Star Trek device on my wrist. I think we all felt like idiots. But the advent of the Apple Watch has been somewhere around like 2006, somewhere in that ballpark with the Fitbit and all that. 2006, 2009, is when they started hitting the markets, and now, of course, I think almost everybody has one. I wasn't able to find that statistic, but basically, we're looking at the last 15 years, and notice I showed you the obesity jumps in the last 15 years. So if these wearables are so effective, then why is obesity climbing so much? Again, I promise I'm going to get more into that, but I want to give you some more stats. Let's talk about performance. I found this to be fascinating. So Mark Allen is one of the greatest triathletes to ever live. He won the Kona, which is the World Championship Ironman Triathlon, 4 times in a row, 80s, early 90s, and actually mostly late 80s, and then in 1990. He was just phenomenal. I mean, this guy was like the greatest thing going. And his record held on the run course from a 1990 Ironman Triathlon. he ran a 2:40 marathon off the bike. 2:40 marathon. That is completely insane. Okay? That's very, very fast for those of you that don't study that kind of thing. That record held for 27 years. And finally it was beat just a few years ago by a German, and he ran it in 2:39:45. Mark Allen's record was 2 hours 40 minutes and 04 seconds, and this guy Lang was 2:39:45. 27 years it held. Now, back when Mark Allen was dominating triathlon, the gadgets were, a watch, good running shoes, singlet. Well, actually, they just wore singlets and running shorts. And the bikes they were on, they weren't these rocket ships they have now. As a matter of fact, his main competitor was a guy by the name of Dave Scott. And Dave Scott is given a lot of credit for inventing the triathlon bar or aero bar, because what he did to try to get a little more advantage on the bike for aerodynamics was he sat on the very end of the bike seat. Yes, not comfortable. And for those that don't know, the Ironman race on the bike is 112 miles. So he sat on the very tip, think of that, put his elbows on the handlebars. You would see these triathletes today on aero bars. Those that don't know, it's this very tucked aero position on these bars specifically made that extend out over the handlebars. So Dave Scott put his elbows on the bar and kind of grabbed the wires that would be like the brake cable things, and to balance himself. And then he thought, hey, I'm going to come up with some bars that support me better. And they started calling them the Scott bars, and then later on they became famously known as aero bars or time trial bars. So anyway, that's the kind of machine Mark Allen was on at the time, a road bike. And that, for those that may not know, what you do on the bike prior to running has a big factor into what you do on the run. So here's the guys back then riding bikes that today would be laughed at, and yet they were setting course records back then. And so gadgets don't just go to running, and wearables for calorie burning. They're different things we can get for cycling too. I mean, I see guys today, and I know, live and let live and all that, it's just, to me, I watch these people in these like aerospace suits down on the trail, and it's like, I get it. Well, do I? These helmets that like extend down their back for perfect aerodynamics, and it's like, aren't we supposed to be getting more fit? So why are you like trying to get every advantage from your equipment when in reality you're supposed to be trying to make yourself more physically fit? I used to ride with a guy years ago who really, really got it, and he was one of the few. He would let some of the air out of his tires, and he would wear like loose bike jerseys and no aero bars on our group rides, because he'd say, I want at least of an advantage as possible, so when I do race, if I race, I'm going to be more fit. I'm like, God, somebody that gets it. But today it's just keeping up with the Joneses, and your typical age group athlete has like a $10,000 bike. It's like, God, I don't know. So let's get back to some of the stats, and then I'll go off on that a little more. So in 1987, Mark Allen did a 8 hour and 45 minute Ironman. In 88, he did an 8 hour 43. In 89, that was the course record for the longest time, 8:09. 1990, I believe, was his last, at least winning. Not completely sure if he came. I think he might have come back and maybe finished second or something. I might be wrong, but the point is 8 hour 28. So within 4 years, he was in the eights. The course record 2015 is a 7:51. So keep in mind his time of 8:09 lasted many, many, many years. And look how close it is. We're talking 18 minutes essentially over a 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike, and 26.2, and 89 no gadgets. And now, everything gadgeted out so freaking much that, everything on the bikes now, reading watts and aerodynamic helmets and, is that an improvement? Yeah. And when you're looking at sport, 18 minutes, that is a lot when you're looking at that kind of level. But then when you think, well, the information and the tools he had compared in 89 compared to what they have now, you give him some of that equipment back then. And my point I'm trying to make is, maybe a lot of this equipment is a crutch. Like maybe he wouldn't have wanted it because now he's not relying, we used to say all the time, on the lungs and the legs, and obviously, maybe not obviously, but today these guys are elite athletes as well. There's no question about it. They're just trying to get every advantage they can, and none of them are lazy. I don't mean to imply that whatsoever. But are these tools really helping is the question. And, I'll get off the elite athlete here thing because, they are different. It is when we're looking at trying to improve sport, it's very different, right? So, you can almost give them a pass. My point is, though, that the numbers have not changed very much. And by the way, for those of you that are wondering, well, what about strength? Trying to find it in my notes here that at the combine, the record was set on the bench press in 1999, and the guy did 51 reps, 1999. That's a 225-pound bench press, by the way, they use at the NFL combines. 1999, 51 reps. So far this year, the combine's been going on. The best we've seen is a 32 or a 33, one or the other. And 99, they did not have what we have now. So it's like, okay, so, and those are the elites. So when you're talking NFL combines, I went with the strength sport. You're talking endurance sports like triathlon, those are the elites, okay? You don't get to the combines without being elite. You don't get to Kona, Hawaii without being elite. Numbers, well, number one, in the bench press, they're not better at all. That's 20 years ago. And in triathlon, as I pointed out, they're barely better. So are these gadgets making us better? And I have a client, we talk a lot about data, and, data is critical. We all hear, well, let's get the latest Apple smartwatch, and it's going to count my activity during the day and tell me how many calories I'm burning. And then if I'm tracking my food, I can come up with or put all the numbers into the equation, and I can lose weight. Well, great. Is it working? Well, on obesity, it's a flat out no, right? The data says no. Is this, direct causational data? No. But this is correlational data. So, almost everybody I know, I'm not going to generalize, I don't live in other parts of the country or definitely not in the world, but almost everybody I know, I can think of maybe one or two people I know that literally don't have a smartwatch. I'm trying to think, gosh, literally don't have any at all, but everybody else has a smartwatch of some kind or another. They're using it, most of them, for exercise. They're using it for other things, which is, I guess, originally what they're designed for. And I'm not down on them for phone calls, and the Maps feature on my Apple Watch is great. If you're walking around New York City and you put in an address, and now it's got its own negatives, right? Because we're not using our mind as much, but I get for things like that. They're very helpful. They can be distracting too, but I get the point of them. I'm keeping to exercise here, fitness and sport. And so most that I know have one, and so my assumption would be most nationwide have one. It's not working. I mean, obesity is just climbing and climbing, and again, I know it's correlational, but the point is can they help? Sure, but they're not helping. You might think then, okay, so why are you being Mr. Down on technology? It's like, look, every company has a right to make money. That's what they do. I'm in the business to help people get more fit, to get more well. And my argument to what does it hurt is, honestly, I think it's very typical of people who kind of want to get better but don't want to get better. And it can easily become just a crutch of, well, I'm going to go ahead and get this and this is going to fix my problems. In many ways, it's a pain in the ass, and trainers know that because, you're helping your client get through a workout and you're trying to teach them the whole point of the workout, and they can get obsessed with starting their watches on time and then reporting back their calories to you at the end of the workout, or comparing to other people and telling you that they don't burn as many calories as so-and-so and why. And then, me being the physiologist has to kind of go, well, these logarithms they use are based on your weight, and that's it. So in other words, the heavier your weight is, which is pretty much a fact, the more calories you're going to burn. It's also throwing in some maximum and target heart rate numbers into it, so it's reading your heart rate. But studies show that even on target heart rates, it's only 66% accurate. So 33% of the time it's not accurate at all. I mean, how do you know if you're one of those people? You don't, and they never claimed it was perfect. They're trying to come up with. I'm sure they have exercise physiologists working behind the scenes to come up with the best metrics possible, but it's impossible. Bottom line, you have to go through all this testing to get your actual numbers. What your resting metabolic rate is, how many calories you burn per 1 minute, which, yes, can be figured out at a given heart rate. If it really knows your maximum heart rate, there's no way it knows your maximum heart rate. So we're trying to explain to people all the time, look, take your mind off of that. Like, that's not what's going to get you fit. The workout should be focused on, if you're doing strength training, then it should be focused on doing your movements you're supposed to do, doing them absolutely as correct as possible, and doing them with the most intensity that you can in good form. Like, that should be your 3-point checklist right there. Are you doing the right exercises? Are you doing them correctly? And are you doing them with the right intensity? It has nothing to do with burning calories. And regarding cardio, there's no way. It's hard enough as somebody who does VO2 max testing to get people dialed in with the right heart rates, because they change. I mean, the famous saying by the Stoics that you don't step into the same river twice. So there's a lot of variables with heart rate. I mean, a cup of coffee can change your heart rate by 10 beats. The weather outside, which we call cardiac creep if it's over 80 degrees, which it almost always is in Florida, can affect your heart rate by 10 to 15 beats. Stress and anxiety can change your heart rate from 5 to 10 beats just sitting there. Beta blockers can change your heart rate to the lower end of it and keep it kind of capped at like 100 to 105, somewhere in that number. So it's hard enough to get it right testing people and knowing these numbers and facts, let alone a $250, $300 wristwatch telling you you're in the right zones. So cardiorespiratory wise, they're wrong too. And then it uses that data plus your weight, but it doesn't use your muscle weight versus fat weight, which is the only way to really determine how many calories you're burning. In other words, a 200-pound man at 10% body fat, which is lean and muscular, is going to burn way more calories than a 200-pound man at 30% body fat who is a lot fatter is going to burn. Fat does not burn calories. Muscle does. That wristwatch does not know your lean mass. None of them. So these numbers essentially are not accurate. Again, what does it hurt? It gives you a false sense of security, and quite frankly, I think it takes the priority off of what it should be on, which is you. And I do think a lot of people just get them to kind of kick the can down the road and say, well, I'm going to get this and this is going to fix my problems type of thing. And the reality is it's not going to fix your problem. And the only thing that is going to help you get in shape is, let's just assume you're like most Americans. You need to lose body fat. You need to increase your muscle. I hate to use the word tone because it's so misunderstood, but you need to increase your muscle mass, which you're going to call tone. That's fine. And you need to improve your stamina. You need to lose body fat. Okay. So you're like most people. The only thing that's going to change that is consistent training of your aerobic system to improve your endurance and heart, consistent strength training, as I already pointed out, the right exercise, the right form, right intensity to get stronger, and then consuming less calories than you need to lose weight. Like, that's what it's going to take. The one area of technology that I know helps, although it's not necessary, are the MyFitnessPals and the things you can log your food into. But I hate to even put that under the realm of technology, because in the late 80s when I was in college, we were keeping food logs back then, but we wrote them out and then we looked things up. And I do think that helps a lot. So the apps and the computer programs can help with that. That's okay. But these wearable technologies, I just don't think they're helping us. And, I'm going to go back to, now I'm going to take another shift, because, people use wearables to lose weight and people use wearables to improve their performance. The endurance athletes, the runners, the bikers and all that. And they even have them for swimming now. My God, don't you want some peace? And, does it really, really matter? So I started out this podcast talking about, what's more objective, duration versus miles, so time versus miles. And if you notice, if you look at any exercise physiologist, textbook, so to say, when they're talking about, measuring VO2 max, it's all in time. It's not in miles, right? Time is what we all have consistently the same, right? We all have 24 hours in a day. So when you're measuring fitness, when you're looking at fitness, so for example, they know like your max VO2 max can be found in basically 5 minutes. It's the maximum speed you can hold for 5 minutes. Like that, your VO2 max, you cannot hold it longer, 100%, than 5 minutes. That's going to be like your best 5-minute segment of a race, so to say. It doesn't say 5 miles, obviously not. It doesn't say 1 mile. Why? Well, one person's VO2 max for 5 minutes, they maybe could barely cover a half a mile. Another person, they're past the mile. So duration or distance is not very objective. The reason why it's used so much in training is because when we race distances. But it still comes down to duration. It still comes down to time. So essentially, and this is where it can hurt some of the athletes out there. It's like, it can be maddening when your GPS isn't working, and it can really screw with your pace. I have a client I work with now. These things can really like blip out and be all over the place until they find their steady rhythm. And if you're relying on them to help you find your pace, you're probably going to be underachieving. You could be overachieving in the beginning, but that's going to lead to underachieving because you were going too fast in the beginning because your stupid watch was telling you you're going a pace which you weren't. Like, you were going a lot faster and it was saying a lot slower. And so you freak out and you speed up. And look, man, I've been there. I'm saying This is what it does to me oftentimes. And then I go back to when I first started, I left bodybuilding and started getting into some endurance events, and I had my either Casio or Timex wristwatch. It's all we had back then, and we would go out and we would measure some distances so we'd have an idea. I mean, for those of you that, were 70s kids and 80s teenagers, you know exactly what I mean. You're driving around the block to find your mile, right? You're pressing the little button and you're driving, and oh, there it is. It's at Lucy's mailbox. You turn around and, or maybe you're not, and you're thinking I'm absolutely insane because you grew up with smartwatches, but like that's what we did, and it was about as accurate as that sounds. Not very, right? But it was accurate enough. I can remember when I first started doing long distance races, yes, but training, and I wanted to do roughly 10 miles. So like I drove from my house over the bridge, and I drove down A1A, and then I found the condominium, which was roughly 5 miles away, and then I turned around and then I went back and ran that on the beach. I mean, that's probably off by a good mile, right? I mean, I didn't even drive on the beach when I measured it. I just went by and that's about 10 miles. And we all had, that's about, and it worked fine. That's when I was absolutely at my peak aerobic conditioning wise. And of course I was, 30 years younger. I mean, I get that. And that's really what it boils down to. These watches and stuff aren't going to take years away. I mean, but it worked great. And just knowing, you have your watch, you hit your watch and you go, there's a lot of just freedom in that, because really, and hear me, write this note down right now. All the training you do is going to come down to time over intensity. Time over intensity. Like, that's what we measure. That's what's studied by exercise physiologists. Frequency, intensity, time, tempo, type. That's what we look at. That's what can be measured right there. So if you have a watch, you have your time. Now you have to figure out how to measure your intensity. That's a hell of a lot more accurate and non-variable than heart rate and pace, which again, both of them are going to flip out on the watch, and the heart rate's not accurate at all. It does not know your numbers, and oftentimes it's wrong. Do you know how many people have, now the medical industry is starting to talk about this, people that have gone to the emergency room because they believe they're an AFib because their smartwatch told them they were. And it's like, no. And of course, it's better to be safe than sorry. I get that. And they're not saying don't come in. But the point is, it's wrong, So in a lot of cases. The point is that we need time over intensity. These gadgets can't give us that. And oftentimes, they're leading to, people not doing their best because they're too focused on these numbers, when in reality, we can find our own pace by simply following the common sense, which we always said was, you're going to be aerobic when you can hold your best pace that you can hold and still barely carry on a conversation. There you go. And when you're racing, you're not going to be able to carry on a conversation. I used to find my absolute best pace by simply listening to my body. And I think that's where these kind of gadgets are absolutely hurting us. We're not learning how to listen to our own body. George Sheehan, the famous cardiologist who wrote excellent books on running, was a legend. He wrote for Runner's World. He was a New York City guy, and he was one of the guys I read all the time when I was first getting into that sport. And and now it's been confirmed, and I talked about it in brain training the other day. And he used to say way back, this is 80s, 90s, he'd say, well, he would love his 5-mile runs every day. And up in New York, Central Park, and he'd say, your body knows, your brain and body knows you're running 5 miles. It would pretty much dial in the best pace for you, knowing that information. You think there's no way. No, there's way. They know it now. The brain is very, very smart. So if you tell yourself, well, I'm running 5 miles, I'm running 30 minutes, your brain is automatically going to plug you into a really good best pace for you, give or take. Where you're not going to have to slow down a whole lot and you really don't have a lot to speed up. Now, if you say you're going 10 minutes, it's going to shift to the faster. It's just true. And ask any experienced endurance athlete, they would tell you the same thing. They say, oh, no, that's true. Like if I'm doing a 100-mile ride on my bike because I'm training for an Ironman, my body pretty much dials into the right pace I need to be at right away. Now you start looking at these gadgets and guess what happens? You freak out because the ego gets involved, and the ego never helps us in training. Never helps us. It always tells us we're doing better or worse than what we think we should be, which means we're not listening to our body. And, I know this is a long podcast because it's Sunday, but hey, listen to it in parts if you want to. So I'll start to wrap it up by saying, this one of the reasons why people get into training and especially outdoor training, hiking, all that, running, biking, they want to get away, and I've talked to many people who did the local scenes of all the 5Ks, and then they started drifting towards marathon, and then and don't get me wrong, I never enjoyed marathons, but then they start drifting to long, what they call ultras, which are double marathons and 50 milers, and a lot of that, all of it actually, is in nature and trails. And it's part of the reason is to get back to basics. They want to get away from the noise. They're the people you're not going to see with these gadgets. Not going to see it. They don't want all that crap. They don't want to be told what pace they're supposed to run. They know, they've listened to their body. They've grown up. They know what's best for them, And think of I put them more in the group with people who really study yoga big time, which I have a lot of respect for, same thing, I couldn't imagine. I was just thinking of it and started laughing to myself here. Got to entertain myself. Of a yogi sitting there with their Apple Watch going, oh, now, hit perfect Zen. It just told me I did. It's not going to happen. They're teaching you how to listen to your body. Well, these things don't do that. So these ultra guys and these trail runners and, long distance cyclists, they want to get away from it all, So think about that and, take away these key points. They're not helping us as a nation get more fit. They probably are a major distraction and way to kind of tell yourself you are going to get fit. And they could be potentially hurting you from learning how to listen to your body and know firsthand what is best pace, what is best distance. Maybe go back to basics. 1975, we had only 10% obesity. Let's think back. What did they do back then? They exercised, they ate better, and all this. We just need to get back to basics as a country, as a world. Make this a priority. And, I know the people at Polar and Apple, they don't like me talking about stuff like this. And I don't mean me. They could give a rat's ass about who I am here in Port Orange, Florida. But I mean that, people also that talk about these things, it's we're not good for their business. But, I don't think too many millions are listening to this right now, and I'm thinking Apple might forgive me. But the bottom line is I don't have anything against them. I've always said, people try to take down corporations, like McDonald's and everything. It's look, they're doing what they do. They're trying to make money, and that's their absolute right. We have to educate ourselves as consumers as to what's good for us, and if these things are getting in the way of helping us improve and getting more fit, then we really need to, think about that. So anyway, Gadgets, and more gadgets. You know, are they really, really helping us? You know, are they hurting us? You know, what do you think? What do you think? On that note, I want to thank our sponsors, Jonathan and Lynn Gilden, the Gilden Group at Realty Pros. They can be reached at thegildengroup.com or 386-451-2412. They're both really into fitness. They both value fitness. And as I've said countless times, anybody I want working for me, I want to value fitness because, as John F. Kennedy said, you know, all forms of excellence begin with physical fitness. And I believe it to be true. And physical fitness is subjective in the sense that, you know, not everybody can have perfect bodies and not everybody can be like, Steve Prefontaine running a 13-minute, 10-second 5K. Forgot to throw that one out there. But we can all absolutely be our best. So I believe in that, and I believe that Gilden Group at Realty Pros can really help you. So give them a shout out, and until next time, be Max Fit and be Max Well.